a nice applause subdued for the room next door. Thank you. I think the camera's rolling.
Are you rolling? All right. Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Make sure everybody gets in their seats. Did everyone get a handout on your desk?
Yeah.
Anyone have a couple extras if you need a couple extra?
I need one.
May I just give this to you, Becky, and have you pass those around so that everyone can get those?
Okay, Betty.
So, it looks like everyone's getting seated. How's the temperature in here? Is the temperature better? We're trying to warm it up a little bit. So, my name is Debbie Shields. I am the designated broker owner of Shields Regal Realty, and I'm honored also to serve as your 2020 chair of the National Association of Realtors Professional Standards Forum.
Oh, wow.
So, today, this class is all about us. Every one of us, it doesn't matter what state we're from, it's about us and our professionalism. Every day, I don't know if you do this, but I do this every day. I think of how can I be better? How can I improve? And where can I improve? As a broker, how can I improve? As an educator, how can I improve? As representing the public, the buyers and the sellers, landlords and tenants, how can I be better? How can I protect them? That's what I ask myself. Do you ask yourself that? How many of you ask yourself that every day? Every single one of you, absolutely. And we should, shouldn't we? Because we always want to aspire to be the best of the best in what we're doing. And that's why we're here today, isn't it? So this class, I teach not only in Arizona, but I also teach it in Washington State, and I also teach it around the country. So this is for everyone that's a Realtor member. So what's a Realtor member? Does anybody know what a Realtor member is?
A what?
Jack.
It's a professional designation. So a broker is not necessarily a realtor, but a realtor is always a broker or an agent. So it's someone who belongs to the National Association of Realtors and their state association and their local association.
Jack, thank you very much. Jack said that a Realtor member is a designation. The designation comes from the National Association of Realtors. And you're correct, Jack. Thank you for that answer. You must be and pledge, you must be, first of all, a member of your local association. So I know all of you are from different states here in this room today, but you must be a member of one of those local associations. You also must be a member of that state that you reside in. That state association. You must also have membership in that, just like Jack said. And you must also be a member of the National Association of Realtors, and furthermore, pledge to abide by the strict code of ethics that every one of you have on your desk this morning. That's a Realtor member. And Jack, thank you for that answer. Thank you. And I think I saw another hand.
It was
yes,
me.
Becky.
I have to take the opportunity because this is something I always do. Appraisers can be realtors. It's not holding a license, it's paying the club dues and being able to be a member of the club dues.
Thank you, Becky. Becky makes a really great point this morning. She said that appraisers may also be members and become a Realtor member because remember when we stated with Jack that the membership must be held in the local association, the state association, and the national association, correct? So if that person is an appraiser or does appraisal, may they also be a member of all three associations? And the answer is absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, Steve.
Can I add? I also, when telling people, is it's not only being a realtor, but in saying that you will adhere to the code of ethics, but you will be bound to the decisions of your peers, held accountable.
Accountable. D, thank you. So D brings up another point, and we all, how many of you put up your right hand when you joined the association and you pledged to abide by the strict code of ethics? Everybody in this room have your hand up? Absolutely, every one of us. And furthermore, in Article 17, I'm going to jump ahead just for a moment because of your example, D, and that is Article 17 of the Code of Ethics says that mediation and arbitration, if that were the situation, two look at a situation and resolve some dispute, that our membership would make that decision and we would adhere to it. So we've all pledged to abide by that strict code of ethics. That's what we're here about today. We're here today to raise our bar. We're here today to be better than we were yesterday. And today, tomorrow, I'm going to be better than I am today. How many of you like that? How many of you think like that? We're on the same page, aren't we? I love that. So here's where the code of ethics, and I have the code be with you because we're all together today. We're all together in the same boat. I want to talk to you today not only about today, but I want to bring this class from, we're going to do 3 hours, but we're going to bring this class from the history, way back, where we began, and then I want to bring you current. And as your past chair of my professional standards forum, I want to make this class very relevant to each one of you. Relevant into the sense that you know what's happening right now out there on the streets. Not everybody's every day out there working on the streets. Most of you are, but you're boots on the ground. And boots on the ground, and things that happen, you know where they happen? They happen right here in our little communities. Every one of us see things happening in our communities, don't we? Every day, and then it goes, those problems, that information gets pushed forward from your local board, then to the state board, all the way to the national, but really where it happens is right here in our communities. That's where our value lies. Every single one of you in this room, we are talking to the public. We are meeting the public face to face, aren't we, Sandy? We're meeting the people face to face, eye to eye. You know how many industries don't even know their buyers and sellers or their consumers? You're just another number. Would you agree with that? So many industries out there, you're just another number, right? Can anybody tell me a situation that you've been in lately where all of a sudden you felt like something's different? Now, I want you to think about this. Did real estate change in 2020 when we had COVID?
Oh, yeah.
I'm asking you this for a reason.
You know, for years, I taught that buyers and sellers had to see, touch, taste, and feel, or buyers, property. And if they couldn't see, touch, taste, and feel, that they weren't going to buy sight unseen.
Okay, Dick, thank you for that.
This is why you can't ever say never.
Oh.
Because in 2020, we found out, I had a student in the class who actually had sold 5 houses the previous week, all done virtually, and he did it by using FaceTime with his buyers in other locations, where he went through the house as if they were with him and demonstrated the house with his FaceTime. And 3 or 4 years ago, I'd have told you that you're smoking dope. But and I don't think that's going away. It's
You
going
don't
to stay
think
with
that's
us.
going on. So Dick's comment, and let me just summarize if I can for a moment. Dick said that in 2020, he used to always teach that if you couldn't see and taste, sort of smell the house, you were going to buy the house. But when COVID hit, what happened? We turned to technology, didn't we? We turned to technology. Dick's comment was this young gentleman went out and started FaceTiming. FaceTiming is, if you don't know, it's when you're actually showing the property live at that very moment in time. Okay? So as a broker, I'm kind of nervous about that. Why? Because am I always looking up at the ceiling for spots on the, you see where I'm saying, what I'm saying? But is the public getting adjusted to technology? Do we have more iBuyers? Do we? Do we have situations that have changed in just the last year and a half that we never had before? Your boots on the ground, you know where the situations are changing. You know what people want. Furthermore, and every single one of us here, we're in different states. Not every state was an essential business for real estate, was it? How many of you were essential? Let me see a show of hands. Oh, many of you though. Can someone volunteer to tell me what state you're from?
Florida.
Florida? Did you say Florida, Dick?
Florida.
Florida, Dick said. Erica?
Missouri and Kansas.
Missouri and Kansas both. Good for you. Thank you.
Utah.
Cheryl's from Utah. Anyone else over here? Say, oh, you're all North Carolina?
I was gonna say North Carolina, but it actually varied by county for quite a while,
Oh, wow.
which made it fun.
Okay, so Jim said North Carolina but varied by county. Can you expound on that a little bit more?
Certainly, there were counties, some of our, North Carolina is very county-based, we had counties before we had cities. There were counties that, for a long time, that thought that agents or brokers were essential business, but other counties, neighboring counties, adjacent counties may have not considered them essential. So for a little while there, we had issues where you could even do face-to-face showings in one county, but the adjacent county would not allow entrants to do face-to-face showings. So it was a really fun time.
Jim, thank you. Jim was explaining that from one county to the other, the laws, the regulations might have been different. Did our behavior change in 2020 and 2021? Not our behavior. Did our industry process change?
Yep.
How we showed houses, like what Dick was saying via Facebook, right, Dick? Also, some states, even county specific, according to Jim, were essential and some were not. Did that change how most realtors worked? Did you see behavior change? That's my big question for you. Did you see behavior change? Terry and then Dee.
I'd say the biggest change I've seen is like a total lack of professionalism.
Oh.
Where people won't return a call, you can only speak to someone by text. I mean, it just seems like a massive lack of professionalism.
We're essentially becoming feral.
Terry shares that the professional standard had dropped. He saw that individuals were not returning phone calls. You witnessed that, correct, Terry? Or text messages, returning and actually working together. Article number 3 of the code says we have to cooperate with each other, right? Well, is this an issue? And I'm bringing this to light because this is relevant across the country. Harold?
Well, I ended up getting hired by Nebraska 3 years ago to create 21 hours worth of education for agents and put a committee together, and it came up with 65 different areas that agents were lacking in terms of expertise, in terms of running their business, interacting with the public, and obeying the laws. And it was quite sobering. It made it real easy to write the course because we got 55 topics.
Yeah.
That's a no-brainer. 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, then go. But it was sobering that the angst and the stress that they had about the lack of this training and education and care taking place with the people that are responsible for big purchases.
For big purchases. Here's the interesting thing. 65 items on her list. 65. 65. Think about that. We only named, what, 2 so far? But 65. 65. And what was number 1, do you recall?
Number 1 was professional dress.
Professional dress was number 1?
Yep.
How can that be? Well, interesting. I'm from a state that's very warm. And I've seen exactly your number 1 with shorts on and so forth. Here's the problem.
Yeah.
As an owner broker, can I require, this is the word, require, can I require that all my licensees underneath my employee dress professionally? Can I? Can I or can I not?
Depends on the
If they're,
employees.
okay, let's talk about this. If they're a W-2, where I tell them they come to work at 8 to 5, and
You can require.
we're shaking our head, the answer would be yes,
Yeah.
because they're an employee, but most of my licensees are independent contractors, aren't they? Are most of yours? Are most of you independent contractors? Furthermore, yes. So we have that crossover. So I can say the word recommend. So I say the word recommend a lot. I recommend that we raise our standard of care. I recommend that we dress appropriately and professionally. Carol, number 1 for you, right? I would not leave my house without being professional.
And then we come into, just a segue, but the broker's responsibility and the brand and the representation to the public is they also have an accountability to the brokerage in terms of, and I can determine who's going to be allowed to work under my roof. So if this is what I'm going to be expecting, that I don't want young ladies who have everything here, and I want you to be covered up appropriately, because we don't want the wives going,
So, Carol, I love that comment. Appropriate dressing, when we think about appropriate and professional and appropriately also, you don't want to go and have parts of the body exposed, so to speak, right? And that's what Carol's point is. Thank you, Carol. That's great information for us.
well, the only reason why I have to say that though is I had a young man that showed up the second day of work in a Speedo, so.
Is a Speedo, wait a minute, let's clarify what a
He was showing lake
Speedo is.
properties and he thought it was
It's a
appropriate.
very
attire.
scanny male
I'm serious,
bathing
I'm deadly serious with a Speedo.
Okay, now does everybody know what a Speedo is?
Yep.
Isn't that like a spray-on swimming suit?
Is that a Speedo? Tell me what a Speedo
It's
is.
a man's thong.
Whoa.
swimming in it.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay,
We can picture that.
I'm looking at, Carol, how did you feel when you saw this?
Another drink.
I looked at him and I said, well, that was a mishire.
Whoa.
No, actually what I did was I got a towel, which I always keep in my car, because when you have dogs and stuff, I had a towel, I had to come in and sit in my office, and we talked about what was appropriate attire or not, and I said, just because you're showing lake property, you're not actually going into the lake, and if you were, then I would recommend boxers, because again, we don't want to share all of your family jewels. I have very blunt conversations, you know that when they come and talk to me, and I'm also an HR manager, and I appreciate it, and I'm glad to be proud of who you are and what you have, but for this purpose, let's try to help it make comfortable for our customers and clients.
Oh, I love that.
Yes, we
well done.
usually get agreement.
Carol says that she is also in HR. Thank you, Carol. She's in HR, but here she is, the broker. She's responsible. How does the public view her brokerage when her one employee or independent contractor comes in with that little tiny Speedo, male thong is what somebody said over here. But can you even, do you get a visual of that? Is that professional? Ask yourself, and put yourself in the buyer's shoes, would you please? What does a buyer expect? Professionalism. If you do not show yourself professionally, are you just losing value in the face of the public? Credibility in the face of the public?
And religion's a protected class, your outfit should not explain it to us.
Jim said, say, can you repeat that, Jim? I'm sorry.
No, ma'am, no, thank you, I'm sorry.
Debbie,
So, yes, Dick.
when you live in a state like Florida, you find that a proper attire can be highly geographic specific.
Ah, that's interesting.
Okay.
In the urban areas, professional attire is one thing, but when you go, I've got a condominium in New Smyrna Beach, you won't find anybody at the beach, in the beach communities, they're wearing, it might be career apparel, but it's a golf shirt and it's a slacks. You go to Key West, and you're lucky to see anything more than brogans and shorts and a Tommy Bahama shirt. They don't care about anything down there.
Okay.
So.
Dick, to Dick's point, thank you, Dick. Dick said, dress attire is maybe geographical. So, and he used an example of possibly shorts in some areas, but at the same time, can you have really nice shorts?
Yeah.
That are dress shorts?
Sure.
That are more credible instead of a little Speedo. I like that little Speedo thing, because I know we can all visually see that.
I'd rather not.
I'd rather not.
This is one time
I've seen way too many people with speedos. You definitely shouldn't be
Exactly.
wearing them.
Well, let's go to the code of ethics. Let me take you back in time. So everybody, come with me. I want to put you on, picture yourself on like a horse and buggy wagon.
Not mosquito.
Coming across the United States. I want to take you on a trip with me back in time. So I want to take you from all the way from the East Coast, and come with me, keep coming with me on this wagon train, and I'm going to take you all the way across to the West Coast. From east to west, we're going east to west. In 1900s, what was that like? What was that like? when people were moving, and you're all part of helping people move and relocate from one location to another, think about a horse-pulled wagon. What do they have on the wagon?
Everything they own.
Everything they own, and you're absolutely right, thank you, Dick. Everything they own as they're going across the country to their new home. They're selling things along the way, aren't they? They are moving from one location to another. They may have, just even cattle. Cattle back in the day was actually a consideration. We called it chattel for the purpose of real estate, but it was valuable. And they would exchange whatever they had left on that wagon for, let's say, 40 acres over here of land. But back in the day, it was interesting. And some states are like this, so I want to take you sort of back in time a little bit. If this is Main Street in one of these little towns, let's call it the West, for instance, there would be a building right here, and the building right here in this location would be actually the bank, okay? Bank. Right beside it, this would be a law office. Maybe
Where's the saloon?
right over here would be a real estate office.
In the law office.
Yeah, in the law office.
I'm sorry?
I said, where is the saloon?
Where's the saloon? Sorry, Janet, no saloon in this diagram. But it could be there, couldn't it? So here we are. People are moving across the country, and in the 1900s, there were real estate agents in this business right here. But they didn't have code. They didn't have a professional standard to abide by. They didn't pledge by code of ethics because it didn't exist yet. It didn't exist yet. When they bought real estate, they would take their money into this real estate office here, and if the transaction went well, they would move over here to the law office. Because why? Because an attorney back in the day would have to write the deed and the contract and close that transaction. Many of you today in this classroom right now, you don't need that, right? Because in your states where you're from, you can do most all of that transaction, negotiating, writing the offer, and closing the deal. Some states you still do need an attorney because those are deed theory states, correct? But in theory states, you can do most all of that. Here's where the problem came in. Behavior was recognized when they would give them their last belongings off of that wagon. Off of that wagon, they would give them their last, either grandma's, whatever, heirloom, or the cattle that they had. And then that agent would jump on a horse, this is research, and leave town with the money, with whatever it was. So there was no code. So back in the day, the gentlemen got together and they decided that they would have a meeting. And that meeting that they wanted to have, they decided in 1913 to start a code of ethics for all of us here in this room. Charles Claiborne was the past president of the Minneapolis Board of Realtors, and he's given credit for devising our initial, very first code. All the verbiage in that code was e-brother or brother, because guess what? Women were not allowed to be real estate, right? Back in the day. Who do you think there's in real estate, certain areas of real estate? Let's just ask a question for a moment. How many of you think that men still are the number one, numbered by number, 1.5 million of us across the country, right? 1.5 million. How many of you, by show of hands, think that men still are the number one out? You're all shaking your head already, right? How many of you think women outnumber the men now?
Absolutely.
Are we talking sales?
70-30.
We're talking about membership, 1.5 million members. How many of you think men are the number one?
Does that include commercial?
Number
Right,
of
exactly.
1.5 million, the number of membership, and how many think there are women?
Oh, the
I
women.
know they are.
Okay. So,
Women far
it had,
outnumber
and
men.
but to point B is, the point being is, in the very beginning, this is our history, women were not allowed outside of the house. They were not allowed to sell real estate. But yet today, in residential especially? And I like that question, Amy, you said what area, didn't you?
I said, what, are we just talking commercial or residential?
Yeah, so in residential, women outnumber men in their domicile, their nesting natures that have, it's all part of that. But women seem to be very, very strong now. Back in the day, it was all men. 1913, Charles Padborn writes the Code of Ethics of the National Association of Realtors. What's interesting for you is I want to share with you, they decided to have that first meeting, believe it or not, at the YMCA. How many of you know that song? YMCA. How many of you know that? Sing it for me. YMCA. And who did that song? Anybody know that?
Village
People.
People.
Village People. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. YMCA. Why did they have it at the YMCA?
Young Men's
What is the
Christian,
YMCA?
Young Men's Christian Association.
Thank you so very much, Dick. Young Men's Christian Association, right? Was it air conditioned at the YMCA in the 1900s?
No.
Not at all, not at all. The history goes on that 120 members showed up from across the country, across the United States. Out of that 120 members, 19 boards were devised that day, and one state association was created. This was May 1913. What state association do you suppose, does anybody know the state association that started on that first meeting at the YMCA? Does anybody know?
New York.
Illinois is a great guess because it was held in Illinois.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kim.
Maryland.
It was, I'm sorry?
Maryland?
Maryland, Dee says Maryland. Thank you, Dee. And that's another good guess as well because they're close by, right? Believe it or not, it was California. Is California progressive today? And were they progressive way back in 1913? Absolutely, absolutely. So this is the beginning of our Code of Ethics. In the Code of Ethics, you have a preamble. The preamble starts, and I love these first 5 words. Under all is the land. Under all is the land. Think about that. And I want you to stay in the history back here in 1913. Did everyone own property in 1913?
No,
Could everybody own property in
No.
1913?
why women couldn't sell.
I'm sorry, who said that?
That's why women
Oh.
couldn't sell. They were not
Becky's-
recognized.
Becky says, thank you, Becky. Becky says women could
Not
not
title.
hold
Title.
title.
It's chattel,
Yeah.
not cap.
Right.
It
Well,
wasn't
we
until
were chattel.
1974, right, Becky, before women could buy real estate in the battle of the sexes.
We were chattel, that's what.
We were chattel.
We were chattel.
Under Article 10 of your Code of Ethics, it states that you and I may never, ever, either advocate or discriminate against one of the protected classes. Those protected classes are race, color, religion, sex, national origin, familial status, disability. Pick up your pen and write down 2 more. We, as a national association, all of us together, added in 2012 sexual orientation. And then furthermore, write down in 2014 sexual identity. We have 2 additional ones under Article 10 of our Code of Ethics that we didn't have in 1913, right, Becky? Becky makes a very good point. Very good point. Is this part of our professional standards, part of our professional guidelines, that we are not allowed to discriminate on others? So when I have, and say this word, these 5 words to you, under all is the land, what does that mean to you? Does anybody want to volunteer what that means to you?
I think
Jim?
it's an impressively profound statement that speaks to what real property is. And the fact, particularly in its founding, that the key to successful life, to true wealth and happiness was land ownership. It's interesting that essentially that truth has not changed.
Ooh, thank you so much. Jim talks about, and I'm going to summarize just what you were saying, about land ownership and how it really over the years hasn't changed. And may I just add a couple words to your comment? Is it part of the American dream? Class under all is a land. And upon its wide utilization and widely allocated ownership depend the survival and the growth of our institutions. Realtor members should recognize that, and this is in your preamble, that realtors must recognize that the highest and the best use of the land and the widest distribution of land ownership. And this is created in farms and industries and communities. That's part of our preamble. If you look at your outline that I passed out to you, on the front page, you'll see the preamble. That's the first paragraph of the preamble. Under all is the land. And when I think about that, I embrace that in my heart, and I know every one of you in this room do as well, because this is what we do for a living. And we help individuals find that land, that American dream. Did the American dream get taxed in 2020? Did you see problems with individuals not having the American dream? And today, has it changed again? Because I'm bringing you from the history, but I want to bring you also right now to make this relevant to the current day. Are many of you seeing low inventory across your state? How many of you are seeing very, very low inventory? Can I see a show of hands? Cheryl, what state are you from, and can you describe that for us, if you would, please?
Utah. In the Salt Lake Valley, it is absolutely crazy because job growth there is so significant. It's actually higher than it was pre-pandemic. We're one of the 2 states in the country that are seeing that kind of job growth. As a result, with the creation of new households and how fabulous our skiing is, everybody wants to move there and everyone wants to live there. And we do not have enough new housing starts to accommodate, and we don't have enough inventory, period. The highest number of multiple offers one of my personal coaching clients saw on one piece of property, 89 offers.
Wow.
89 offers on a $450,000 home in Sandy, Utah.
Wow.
Split entry.
Cheryl, thank you. I'm like shocked. So 89 offers on one property. We're going to talk about our behavior and our professionalism right now because we want to talk about how we're presenting offers because that's part of our code of ethics. How do we present offers? As quickly as possible, as exponentially as, and we're talking about 89 offers, right? We have to put them all together. We still have to present all of them, don't we, Cheryl?
We certainly do.
We certainly do. As Realtor members, we have to prove that we've, come right back to you, Bob. We have to prove that we presented the offer. Now, all of you have maybe different forms across the states. In Arizona, we have line 473 that says, little box here, mark that box for rejected. To prove that you presented the offer but wasn't accepted, then you have to have the individual
That's
sit on the fence.
Is that wagon train?
There it comes right there, right there. It's here.
Yeah.
That's the drum roll.
Our turn to go tell them.
So, and then the owners have to initial and date that they saw that offer. And then, I don't know for all of the rest of you, but in Arizona, we have to, as brokers, store that rejected offer for 1 year. Do any of you have guidelines like that in your state?
You have to what
3
to
years.
it?
You have 3 years, you have 3 years, you have 3 years.
5.
You have 5 years. So look across the country. Look at that. The difference. Cheryl, thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you. Amy.
Will you repeat that again?
We
You
heard,
have
you have to.
3 years, hard to hear.
to do what?
Cheryl had 89 offers on property, 450,000. And the question was, how do you exponentially print, what you're doing is presenting all offers. And how are you proving that they are being presented? Because the problem is, one of the #1 calls for every state in here is that individuals are not presenting offers. That's one of the biggest complaints. My offer didn't get presented. So in each one of your forms, either you'll have a little section that says rejected offer, the owner has to initial, the owner has to date, and then you have to get it back to your broker because the reason is each state has a different statutory regulation for the broker. And the broker in Arizona must keep it 1 year. And the broker in, is this North Carolina?
Yeah.
North Carolina is 3 years. Somebody said 5 years. Who had
Florida,
that?
Florida.
Florida's
All-
5 years.
all records
So
related to
now
real
it gets
estate,
up to your
correct.
broker, and so these are very, very relevant concerns of professionalism that we are looking at across the United States right now.
Bob,
Maurice, you have, oh, Bob, yes.
How can we say we have low inventory when we've just sold more homes than any year on record?
Because they don't
We
have it.
have exceptional demand, but our inventory is actually historically about normal.
No, it's not.
Okay, Bob said, and
My
anybody
market
that might know this answer, I want you to chime in. Bob wants to know, how can it be that we've sold more homes in the last year? Are you saying 2020 or 2021?
2021,
2021.
sold more homes in the United States than any other year.
Any other
And we
year.
are claiming we have low inventory when we have just sold more inventory than we've ever had.
Does it mean, I don't know the answer to
Well,
that. And I'm just gonna be honest with you and say I don't know, but John, do you know? And it looks like I have maybe.
I have a hypothesis only. And
I'm
that is
sorry,
that-
John?
It's just a hypothesis on that if you look at a national picture, there are places where people are leaving. That creates a larger level of inventory where people are coming to, like North Carolina, where there is no inventory, and if you average it all out, it may feel like normal levels, but in certain places, inventory is nil to none where we live. Whereas in California, for instance, not to pick on California, but they're seeing people leave in droves
Yeah.
compared to other states like Texas, Tennessee,
with
North
New
Carolina, and others, where average it all out, feels normal, certain pockets really tough.
Come in Florida.
Is this helping you, Bob?
It's
This is,
not.
these are
I
thoughts.
think we are misrepresenting the situation. We
No, we're
have
not.
huge demand, but our supply, the number of houses being sold is a record.
That doesn't mean there's a lot of inventory.
Who knows the real answer? Somebody that knows the real answer, please stand up. Are you serious?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why did I stand up, Jim?
So, and it's a great, Bobby, it's a great point. The issue is semantics of the term inventory. We have the highest number of inventory turns ever historically, but we as realtors typically use the term inventory to reference product that is in the stream and available but not spoken for.
Listings,
So we have the highest level of inventory turns, meaning the highest level of transactional turns ever. But what we don't have is we have the historically low pad of essentially inventory on the shelf. So it's a semantics issue more than anything.
Jim, thank you. And thank you for standing up, Jim. Everyone, these are things that we need to think about every single day, aren't they? In our specific communities, because every community is different, every state's different. So when you think about it, this also is relevant that we need to identify. So part of our professional standards is treating the public, and our education is huge. Education, if you don't have education, the number one thing for your value, you'll never go away to this FaceTime, you'll never go away to any technology as long as you prove you had value, and the value is in your education. Let me say that again, your value is in your education. So that question, Bob, thank you for the question, very, very great question, because is it different in every single state, every single community? Is it different? Yes, it is, and there are many reasons why it is different. We're going to take Maurice, and then we're going to go on to our outline a little bit.
So it's interesting, you said they had 89 offers, so in Arkansas, you get 89 offers on the property. Not only does the broker have to sign them, but the agent has to sign every single offer.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Maurice. Maurice said not only the broker, so this is where the difference lies between us and the different states and our forms. Not only Maurice, his seller has to sign, but also he as an agent has to sign as well. Love that. I love that. That's like double. And then you are the broker. You get it and you paper trail it, and you've got all everybody's initials on it. So one more question, Dee?
No, I was just gonna tag on to John, Cheryl, and Jim on what they were saying on our question of inventory and how we use that phrase. What we are having in the reality is at 1 o'clock, 100 houses came on the market. At 2 o'clock, using Cheryl's number, 890 offers were out there. Wow. At 3 o'clock, all 100 houses were pending, so at 4 o'clock, we had no houses to sell. no inventory.
Did everybody?
That's a great
Thank you, thank you.
explanation.
Did
That's
you
great.
think about that? Think about that. All of a sudden, yes, right? So all of a sudden, if you're looking on the MLS, can it look different? Can it be skewed because you have those 89 offers from Cheryl on it, right? And now, what are we doing? Oh, we got all these offers, it looks like it's pending, but then it comes right back on the market. Is it happening every day?
And we have 790 buyers waiting for the next 100 houses. Besides everybody else who woke up this morning and wants to be a buyer, right? No inventory.
Dee, thank you. So those buyers that get rejected, they're still out there buying, they're still out there looking, they're still, and one thing that no one brought up yet, but I wanna bring it up, is supply chain. What about your concrete, what about your what, anything to build with a house? I mean, anything at all that you're building a house out of.
Appliances.
Doesn't matter if it's carpeting or appliances, right? So, under all is the land, the great American dream. Class, I take you there this morning because that is what we do for a living. We have to be relevant. We need to know our history, where we came from, but we need to know where we're going. Do we need to know where we're going to the point where every single one of us have our own specific MLSs, our own specific counties, our own specific communities that we engage in? Is that important to know? That's where your value lies, isn't it? Your value lies in you. You're a human being. You're awesome. Every one of you are so awesome. Under all is the land. Under all is the land is the American dream. I want you to just look at that. Upon its wide utilization and widely allocated ownership depend the survival and growth. And look at this. Did we grow through 2020? Where are we at today? Think about that. You were part of that growth. You're part of the history of America. Every one of you. Every single one of you in here. 1.5 million of us strong across the country. That's who we are, all Realtor members. We pledge for this code of ethics. And I want to take you to the code of ethics. So on your tables, I want you to kind of look at the code of ethics. You have the preamble, which we just talked about a moment ago, but also you have 17 articles broken down into 3 separate sections. Section 1 is going to be duties to clients and customers. Duties to the public, and then thirdly, duties realtor to realtor. Of those 3 categories, where do you suppose most of the complaints come in?
1 through
Did you
9.
know? I'm sorry?
1 through 9.
I couldn't hear that.
1 through 9.
Okay, so duties to clients and customers.
Clients and customers.
The problems are 1 through 9.
Guess what? Thank you, Dick. Thank you for that. Anybody else want to guess? Kim, do you want to guess?
broker.
Oh, Kim says broker to broker. Unfortunately, she's right. Broker, realtor to realtor. Should that be the case, class? Should that be the case? I'm asking you that. Is there any way each one of us can help make that change happen? Can we work together better? Under article number 3, and I'm jumping ahead just for a second, it says cooperating with other brokers. And that's what we have to do every day because you know our job is to protect the public, and we're representing the public. We're representing them. That's part of that American dream. That's who we represent. David, you had a question?
Last time I was at the New Jersey Real Estate Commission, because we have to go there in person to get our CD credits as instructors. Wow. One of the biggest complaints talking to the investigators was improper broker supervision. And what our commission is doing, if a salesperson gets in trouble, they are, besides dealing with he or she, they are fining the broker for improper supervision. And that leads into what Debbie was just saying. How do we get straighten it out? I may be suing a broker to avoid being sued myself, because he'd rather sit on his can and sell real estate from a smartphone and not tell a buyer of a special assessment was just put in place, and the HOA dues went up 20%. He refuses to return my phone calls, and this is a broker owner.
Thank you, David. So David, to his point, in New Jersey, says that New Jersey, they meet at the actual, is it state association?
No, we meet down at the commission for instructors to get their CD credits.
Okay, and so one of the biggest complaints is the broker supervision. So how many of you have designated, how many of you are a designated broker or a broker? Okay, you run the office. A lot of you, most of you. Are you responsible for those underneath your employee in your states?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Indiana.
Indiana, Dee says, thank you, Dee. And,
Yes, Ennis. Yes, Ennis has one.
yeah, and yours?
Georgia.
And you're in Georgia. Thank you, Erin. Thank you. I'm in Kansas. And Heather, you're in Kansas? Correct. Okay, good.
I don't think we're in Kansas anymore.
Here's the thing. Is the broker responsible in your state for every individual underneath their employee? Do they have to supervise? Do your brokers, and those of you who are brokers, do you hold office meetings? And can you now with Zoom? Has technology changed? And to be current today, after COVID, and things have changed for all of us, can we up our number? And are we doing that? Always asking us, are we doing that? So, David, thank you for that, because to David's point, the brokers are responsible, but are the licensees also responsible as well?
Sure.
For themselves? Absolutely. Here's the thing, when we look at broker supervision, can the broker be every place at every time, at every second, and hear every word that's being spoken?
Nope.
So it's called reasonable supervision for a reason, isn't it? Reasonable supervision for brokers, I see that knowledge and teaching them, the agents underneath them, the new forms, the new laws when they come out, maybe COVID. Remember COVID, when COVID first hit? I created my own COVID addendum, just specific for my office until the state association created one for me. Is that taking hold and raising your bar right when things happen? And should we be doing that? That's just a question for all of us. So broker supervision, and we have so many individuals that are not educated to the point where they should really be out there on the street, and the broker does have liability for all of them. Thank you, David. And Travis?
To your broader question of, how do we eliminate, the broker-to-broker complaints as being such an issue with the code of ethics, one of the things I've always tried to impress upon agents under my supervision is that you can be an advocate without being an antagonist.
Travis says you can be an advocate instead of an antagonist. So can you define that a little bit?
Sure, we represent the best interest of our clients. And we recognize that in some cases that's going to lead to us fighting for things that the other side does not agree with. But at the end of the day, recognize that if you were in that person's role, you would be doing the exact same things for your client that they're doing for theirs, and have a mutual level of respect to just put yourself in their shoes and say, they're simply fighting the battle that they're supposed to fight for their client. They're advocating. They're not antagonizing me. So don't take it personally. Respect it. Do the same thing for your client. And then at the end of the day, we will get to a better resolution, and we won't end up angry at each other, so that we can move on to other transactions down the road.
Travis, thank you so much. Travis is saying, basically be an advocate for the public. Understand that we're all in this together. Here's the thing. Can you take the left brain, which is logic, can you take the right brain, which is emotion, pull them together and actually offer solutions to the problem? And that's really what you're saying, David, isn't it? Or Travis, you're saying make a resolution. Work together. What's so fun about being a broker is everybody's so smart, and everybody has different ideas. and you know what your buyers are looking for, or you know what your sellers are looking for, could you meet in the middle and have a fair resolution? And that's what Travis is really getting to, because what you're saying at the end of the day is everybody wants the same thing, right? But we have to do our jobs. We have to do our jobs within the law. And we have to do them professionally, so we're advocating for the correct person that we, or persons, or entities that we're working for.
As a broker.
That's super important, and under your broker, if you're not the broker. Very important. Thank you for that. That's a great share. I really appreciate it. Let's go on with your outline a little bit more. So we have these three categories. These three categories up here are duties to clients and customers, and they're broken down in your outline that I gave you, your handout. Also duties to the public, and thirdly and lastly, duties realtor to realtor. We are going to talk about not only the 17 articles, but I want you to put your eyes on your outline. I want you to look at, on your outline, the standard of practice. The standard of practices are looked at every single year. This code of yours is actually revised every single year. Every single year. And it's revised because of why? Because of what's happening in our industry, where things are taking place, right? And we have to basically bring it up to date. So we have such words in our handout: respect, honesty, integrity, and ethics. Of course, we're talking ethics. Article number 1, and I want you, if you're looking at you're taking notes, whatever, write the word down that is super important, and the word is honesty. Article number 1 says, when representing the buyer, the seller, the landlord, the tenant, all parties and any parties to that transaction must be treated honestly. Now, that word honestly, write down the year 2001. It used to be the word fairly. So the word fairly used to be in that position. Charles Cladbourne, when he wrote it, he said, we have to treat everyone fairly. I thought it was being fair. Well, it seemed fair to me. Does everybody have maybe a different definition of the word fairly? Do you think so, Maurice?
Yes, mine is do unto others before they do unto you.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. That's it.
Give me another high five. I love that. Joseph, love that. Give me high fives. Five. You know what's so fun here? Is that, wait a minute. So here's what's fun here. What's the code all about? Tell me. Quick, we only have a minute.
Do unto others before they do unto you.
No, that's not the right. I'm going to correct it.
Golden rule.
The golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Write that down. Live your life like that. We only have 30 seconds left.
I'm going to amend that.
You're going to try to amend it? No?
Do unto others as others want to be done unto.
All right, the golden rule, class. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Please write that down. If you leave the class today with that in your head, and that's your golden nugget, that makes me happy. Thank you all very much, ladies.